China, heck, even songs and artists from the United States itself. So join me every Saturday at 11 a.m. only on the KSJE 90.9 FM.
KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, here to meet your urgent and emergent medical needs, whether they are COVID-19 related or not. Medical emergencies happen when you least expect them, whether it's a stroke, heart attack, illness, or injury. San Juan Regional Medical Center's caregivers are here to provide care to you and your loved ones. Find out more online at sanjuanregional.com. Ten minutes past 8 o'clock. It is Wednesday morning, October 7th. Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Michlin. Thanks for tuning in to KSJE 90.9 FM, over the air, of course, in San Juan County, 103.3 FM, over the air in Durango, Colorado, and, of course, streaming everywhere from our website at ksje.com. Welcome also to our viewers who are watching this visual radio program. We're streaming the video live to the KSJE Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and this morning also to our Twitter page at KSJE. We are glad that you're with us, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Coming up in the next few moments this morning, we're going to be talking about the Gold King mine spill. That has happened back in 2015, if you can imagine that, 5 years ago. Tom Schillaci is a documentary filmmaker. He has been producing films about the Gold King mine spill. He's on episode 3. He just released episode 2, however, and that's what we're going to be focusing on this morning. He is my guest in the next few moments right here on KSJE, so stay tuned for that. Then, of course, later on this hour, we'll take our weekly trip to the Encouragement Lab. Communications professor Dr. Mike Haddabaugh joining me from the lab this morning. It'll be a best of segment. You'll hear it on the radio and online this morning at 8:50 a.m. on KSJE. Mick Hess takes over the airwaves, Roving with the Arts, our classical music program, and today Mick is featuring music from the great Dvorak. He's got a 90-minute version of the program coming up this morning at 9:06 on KSJE, and that takes us to 10:30 on Wednesdays, of course, our local and regional author program right on Four Corners. Tracy Hales-Vass is speaking with author Bruce Wilson. He is the author of the book called No Place That Far. Mr. Wilson lives in Silver City, New Mexico. We'll be talking with him on Right on Four Corners this morning at 10:30 right here on KSJE. Don't forget, of course, in addition to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, you can also connect with us on our Instagram page as well. Let's talk about the weather forecast very quickly now. Hazy sunshine in the forecast for today. 82 degrees in Farmington, 81 in sunshine tomorrow. It'll be sunny and 80 on Friday, 78 with sunshine on Saturday, and overnight lows in the mid to lower 40s. A change in the weather, though, in the forecast for Sunday with a mix of sunshine and clouds, maybe a chance of a shower, and cooler temperatures, 67 for a high on Sunday, 61 on Monday, and maybe mid-60s for Tuesday. We'll see if that rain develops. We'd like to see some showers here in the high desert for sure. Well, let me turn to my guest this morning, who is back with us to talk a little bit about his documentary about the Gold King mine spill. As I mentioned, Tom Schillaci is joining us via Zoom this morning from his home. He is along the shores of Buzzard Bay, he told me, in Massachusetts. Tom, good morning.
Good morning, Scott, and good morning, Four Corners people.
Good to see you from Fairhaven, Massachusetts is where you are, but right on the shores of Buzzards Bay, and so a great spot that you have, but glad that you could connect with me and talk about the Gold King mine spill and your series of films that you are producing. Episode 1 we've talked about, and you've just released episode 2 now about the reaction in Colorado, and you're working on episode 3, which will move down into New Mexico and the Navajo Nation, correct?
Right.
Got you. And so this is something, this event, which, again, it surprised me to look back to say it happened in 2015. It seems like it didn't happen that long ago. But that really has kind of taken over, and you've been doing a lot of work on the response to this ecological disaster, right?
Well, yes, I started this project before the mine spill. It was going to be the little story of how Silverton and San Juan County might go for Superfund cleanup or not. And then the mine spill happened. And so I've been catching the aftermath And one of the titles for one of these episodes was going to be the aftermath, or crazy aftermath of Gold King mine spill.
Right.
We've seen some things happen over 5 years. So it's been, yes, the river turned orange, but you and I have talked about this before, the forest fires north of Durango. When the rains came in 2018, all that ash and soot got pushed into the river and, choked the fish. And so there were mine spills before the Gold King mine spill, then the Orange River, and you'll continue to see events that disturb the color and the turbidity of the river.
Sure. Well, even the quality, right? Because I think a lot of folks were surprised to learn that maybe the upper Animus isn't as clean and pure as we may think, because for 100 years they've had these leaks out of the mines and things like that have found their way down into the water. Isn't that true?
That is true. And in episode 3, we're talking about New Mexico.
Okay.
There are other things in the river. There's a lot of agricultural runoff and a lot of leaky septic systems. And so, who pooped in the river was the name of a news article a few years ago.
Well, and that is a big deal. I know folks in San Juan County, New Mexico, have been working on trying to clean up some of the septic systems that are along the river, and a concern for folks. And we all share that water kind of, and so these downstream users, as you would say, from Silverton to Durango to Aztec to Farmington to the Navajo Nation and on to Lake Powell, it's a whole interconnected system.
Yes. And so I'll talk about drinking water for a moment.
Okay.
Silverton does not get drinking water from the Animas River. Durango does not get most of its drinking water from the Animas. The Animas River supplements, but most of Durango's drinking water comes out of the Florida River.
And that's by design, right? Because of some of the quality concerns folks have.
That was due to, in the early 1900s, 1904, 1905, the farmers in the Animas Valley were really raising pitchforks against the milling operations up in Silverton. And the sentiment at that time was, well, if you want us to close down the mills and the mines, then the railroad shuts down and the smelter in Durango shuts down and everybody goes out of business. So it was sort of the deal with the devil that Durango said, well, we'll get our drinking water from somewhere else. Right.
And so folks are probably listening to our conversation this morning and going, well, oh my goodness, I think Aztec and Farmington get their water out of the Animas River, drinking water. And so I guess there's some point about dilution and things like that. I'm not an engineer nor a scientist, but I would think that the quality when it gets this far downstream isn't certainly as questionable as it would be further upstream by these sources of these contaminants, whatever they might be. But again, neither one of us are ecological scientists, right?
Well, all the boaters that I know say dilution is the solution to pollution. So, during the mine spill,
right,
when the San Juan County manager at that time was Dr. Kim Carpenter, he worked with Bureau of Reclamation and opened up the floodgates at Navajo Dam to let out more water from Navajo Lake, so that when the San Juan meets the Animas, it would dilute some of that orange water on its way to Shiprock and through the Navajo Nation. So there was definitely an effort to dilute some of that at the time of the Gold King spill.
Exactly. Well, very true. Well, let me play a clip from the documentary this morning, Tom, and maybe we will talk about it after the fact. But I want to show folks a little bit about what we're talking about here. And this was kind of what caused the incident originally. And of course, there was a team from the EPA working up there. They were kind of investigating, as you mentioned. The first part of your interest was to talk about San Juan County, Colorado, maybe becoming the Superfund site. The government could come in, help clean up some of these old mines and other sites that could be posing this big problem, and all of a sudden they caused a big problem. So let's take a look at this clip here from episode 2 of the Gold King Mine Spill, Acid Mine Nation by Tom Schillaci here on KSJE.
So the Gold King Mine is a significant contributor of the metals going to the river. Obviously, it was flowing anywhere over the last several years. We've monitored it. It would vary, fluctuate from, say, about 50 to about 200 GPM.
A couple reasons why you go in there. One is this fracture zone that we talked about with Red Bonita. Two, there has been some, you might be able to find where that water source is and maybe be able to control it in the mine as opposed to having to treat all the drainage coming out of the mine. Three, there's been allegations over the years that the water in the Gold King is actually somehow coming over from the Sunnyside mine pool. Maybe this would be an opportunity to get a sense of whether there's any validity to that or not. So there's several good reasons for wanting to get in there.
It was a bunch of debris and blockage in front of the old portal, and the waste dump sits 6 feet above where the floor of the attic was, and we understood that to be the impoundment.
Right.
And that historically had been the impoundment observed physically by the people from DRMS in the past. So Hayes was here beginning to explore the rock, the bedrock up top at that level, up there at that break and slope.
Just a bit low and inside. He was going for the upper rock, and he started the Gold King mine spill. This is what they wanted to do, but this is what they got. And now the has started.
A little bit of episode 2, Gold King Mine Spill from 2015. Filmmaker Tom Schillaci is my guest this morning, and we are talking via Zoom, and so we could kind of see a little bit about how this all happened, Tom. And so if I was correct in the introduction there to set up that clip, that the EPA was in the area to kind of do a survey or at least kind of find out what the conditions were in some of these abandoned mines up in the mountains north of Silverton?
Yes, they were. They had put a plug in the bottom of the mountain,
Right.
and they wanted to check what the water situation was at the top of the mountain. The number one guy was on vacation to see his daughter get married, and the number two guy was there with about 4, 5, 6 contractors and an excavator and a pile of dirt. And I don't know whether the number two guy was trying to be a hero and clear it out and see what was what. I don't know. You know, I called his boss in Denver, Martin Hessmark.
Right.
Actually spoke with him. And later on, or in the process, in the flow of the conversation, he said, well, you know, everything's under litigation and I can't really talk about that.
Right, sure. But as you showed in the film, you know, they thought that water level was much, much lower than it actually was, and that there wouldn't be any explosive release of mine waste and fluids that would run down the mountain into the creek that fed into the Animas River. And so I think they were shocked as anyone to find out that water had built up over time, I guess, is how it works, right? And was above the hole they were about to dig into the side of that mountain up. I don't know what the elevation was where they were digging, but it's pretty high up there, right?
Yes, there was a better way to do that.
Okay, all right.
If they thought there was water behind the earthen blockage, they would run a stinger, what they call a stinger. It goes through the earthen blockage, and it checks the pressure of the water built up behind the blockage.
Gotcha.
Maybe that was the procedure had the number one guy been there.
Right. But it wasn't. And then,
No.
and we and we have another clip that I want to show about what happened at that moment, right? Because you were able to get some footage from, I guess, from the EPA, right, to put in their film.
Yes. Well, I stole it. And
Stole,
fair use.
stole or borrowed?
Borrowed. It's fair use.
There you go. But let's take a look at this clip again as they are digging into the side of the Gold King mine in 2015. Here we go.
Get a little video of this, I suppose. No, this is not good.
You were so high, too.
I know, we were about 20 feet up.
That bridge over Cement Creek there had a few gentlemen standing on it looking at the water, and the wave of water hadn't gotten to us yet. So I stopped, and it turned out those two gentlemen were from the state, and they were aware it was coming our way. They had made their call. They told me to the state, somewhere in Denver, I imagine, but no one had informed this community whatsoever.
And then it came through a pretty ugly, orange, nasty soup. It turned out to be about a 3-foot surge by the time it hit Silverton here and swept through town. And well, it reminded me when I first saw it, and I remember remarking on the bridge there, it looks like spring runoff, because in spring runoff it looks that coffee color as well. This looked a little bit nastier, a little bit thicker, and there was a lot of debris coming down. It was a flash flood, but I have to admit it didn't look particularly worse than it does for a few days in the spring runoff.
A little bit of episode 2 again from Acid Mine Nation. Tom Schillaci, the filmmaker, is my guest this morning, and the folks we heard from in that clip, Tom, was the sheriff in San Juan County, Colorado, who was talking a little bit about his annoyance that no one was notified locally of what had happened up in the mountains, and also then Mark Esper, who is the former editor there of the newspaper in Silverton, talking a little bit about its, I guess, similarities to maybe some of the color the river turns in the spring.
Yes. You know, my videos go through many iterations, and one of the iterations for the introduction to episode 2 was going to show all the pictures that I have of Cement Creek hitting the Animas River in Silverton in all seasons. Brown water, yellow water, orange water, clear water. You know, it's Cement Creek isn't called Cement Creek for nothing. It drains the volcano.
Yeah. And so the other issue that the film gets into is about notification, right? I mean, there's some other clips of the sheriff. He doesn't really mince too many words, although he's pretty polite. But he was really annoyed that nobody ever communicated, at least to his office, or I don't think anyone locally, of what was happening. And I don't know what the span of time was from when the liquid started coming out of the mountain to when it would hit the town of Silverton, but it probably wasn't a long time to be able to prepare, shutting down water intakes, irrigation canals, whatever you've got coming in off of the river to protect against all this gunk that's now flowing towards your town.
Not much irrigation or agriculture
in Silverton. Okay.
But any fly fishermen that were in a piece that were doing something. Any rafting companies that were doing the Upper Animas. It wasn't a particularly low flow August, so there may have been some Durango rafting companies that were putting in.
Right. Well, and even further downstream too, where as the Animas goes from Silverton into Durango, you do have irrigation. You do in the Upper Animas, you do have a lot more activity on the river as the population increases further south. I think that was one of the gripes in New Mexico was that I don't know if anybody heard. I think finally Durango called somebody down here to say, "Hey, this is heading your way. Get ready." But no one official, no EPA call. It was a City of Durango or La Plata County Emergency Management call. And that may be more of episode 3 than episode 2.
Yeah. No, 2 points. James Ranch in the Animas Valley is the closest agricultural operation to the mine spill. The operators there are paying attention to the river. So
Sure.
when they see orange water, they can close their head gates. Their head gates are not rusted out. They've seen this before. It happens every spring for runoff. The river turns some funky color. Or, a mine blowout. If there was a rain event in behind Purgatory for the Hermosa Creek, some debris and stuff comes out of there. And so the agricultural operator closest to the mine spill was able to work with it and make adjustments for that plume to go by. On the notification aspect of it, in episode 3, Dr. Kim Carpenter from San Juan County, New Mexico, and New Mexico Governor Susana Martinez at the time was very, very, I'll say, angry that they didn't get notified until almost 24 hours after the spill. How I heard it and how they explain it was a water quality person from Southern Ute Tribe called San Juan County, New Mexico, and said, "Hey, this is coming down."
Right. Be ready. And luckily, I guess because of the distance, there was some time to kind of at least spread the word and spread the warning that this was heading downstream. And I know all the cities shut down their water intakes, and then you did have irrigation canals being shut down if their gates weren't rusted and all those things. And so that's what happened in the immediate aftermath, of course. And then there were some long-term effects. I know there's some even still, and I think maybe this gets into episode 3 a little bit. You've been talking to folks here in San Juan County, New Mexico, and also on the Navajo Nation, that even some of the farmland probably still isn't being planted because of concerns over the water quality out of the San Juan at that point. But it was, it did have Animas River flowing into it for a time. Well, constantly.
Thankfully, it appears that we've turned the corner on that. The first couple of years, 2-3 years after the spill, Navajo farmers were reluctant to use San Juan River water to irrigate crops. The public, who would stop at the roadside stands and farmers markets, for 2-3 years were skeptical. Hey, did you water your crops with San Juan River? Was that Gold King mine spill water? In the last couple of years, more Navajo farmers have restarted and re-engaged in agriculture. There have been a couple of articles that feature some of the scientists that have been working through the Gold King Mine Spill Exposure Project, Dene Exposure Project.
Okay.
The data shows that the water is safe to irrigate, and it's been long enough now where they have measured crop uptake of metals into the crops, and the data shows that the Gold King mine spill had no long-term lasting effects on crops. So while there still is a perception that crops are not safe, that is not the reality. The reality is San Juan River is safe for irrigation, and
Good.
The crops have not been affected. And that information comes from non-EPA scientists. And that's the big point here that I would like to make. There is a lot of distrust to the EPA and the U.S. federal government, and it was important that Navajo science was able to come forth and deliver that information to Navajo farmers. I will add one more piece to that. Dr. Carletta Chief from Arizona University had put together a community survey on how many uses Navajo culture has for the river. And just for comparison, I'll say Navajos have 35 or 40 uses for the river. And people in Durango may have 7 or 8 or 9, you know?
Yeah, right.
Once you get out of fly fishing and river rafting and the dog playing in the river, agriculture maybe, but so it was a very big cultural injury, if you want to say,
You
seeing
bet.
that orange water come through.
Well, yeah, a big impact for sure, and I know it's important to remember that for that culture and that population as well, and I think that's a little bit what you're getting into maybe in episode 3, and will there be an episode 4?
Episode 3 talks about New Mexico with a little bit of Navajo Nation and a little bit of Utah.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 4 will focus on the Navajo Nation, so I'll go a little more deeper into that.
Very good.
Yeah.
And so, and we just have a couple of minutes remaining this morning, Tom, but I wanted to ask, if folks want to see the entire series and episode 1 and episode 2, is there a place where it's available to view? Or I know you were featured just recently here at the Four Corners Film Festival. Again, congratulations for being accepted to show episode 2 there.
Thank you.
But how can folks find out more about the work that you're doing?
Well, I'm hoping to finish everything, 5 episodes, and package them together.
Okay.
And then post them on a website. But I think if viewers Google Acid Mine Nation episode 2, I think you'll find a link to Vimeo, and maybe KSJE can post the link to Vimeo on the page.
Yeah, we can certainly share that if that's okay with you. I didn't know if there was a place where folks needed to pay you for watching or if they could just watch it.
No, I make no money. I do not want any money for this. It costs me to go to film festivals, but no,
Cool.
This is about education and awareness. This is not about me selling to Netflix or Hulu or
Gotcha.
Any other service.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Well, we can do that. We can share that link. That's for sure after the program this morning. And then I wanted to ask you too, Tom, about, the other issue that kind of is this kind of ominous forecast is that something like this could happen again in the mountains of southwest Colorado and other places too. But there are a lot of mines up there, a lot of abandoned mines, a lot of water building up, I suppose. And we could see another blowout, even that's not man-made, perhaps. Maybe it just happens, right? Isn't that possible?
Yes, it has happened.
Yeah.
It has happened since the Gold King spill. What the Gold King spill, though, one of the benefits, if you want to call it a benefit, one of the good things that happen is there are more eyes on the river. So there are more monitoring stations that measure pH, conductivity, right? Metals conduct electricity, so conductivity is something you want to measure, and turbidity. And a while back, there was the Silverwing mine that burped, if you want to call it a burp.
Okay.
And burped some orange water out. I don't think the orange water made it down to New Mexico, but some monitors were triggered, and people had their eyes on it, and I'm pretty sure Aztec and Farmington closed their water intakes to their water treatment for that. So it has happened since then.
Right, and I think you're right. I think the term was out of an abundance of caution. We're going to close down our intakes for maybe a few hours or a day. I think that was the word that came out as this passes through, but you're right. But I think the notification certainly happened a lot quicker with all this monitoring, and that's another plus from this incident, right?
Yes. It was a wake-up call to what the conditions are, and like I say, more eyes are on the river now, so that's a good thing.
Very much so. Very true. Well, and Tom, I appreciate you being with me this morning to talk about the documentary, and I know you do it's a labor of love, as you say, because I know as you mentioned, you're not selling tickets or making a lot of money off of these films, but to try to get the word out. And you don't kind of pull any punches. I mean, you call this an opinionmentary, right? So you definitely have an opinion as the filmmaker, and we usually can see that in your films and hear it.
Yes, an opinionmentary.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, Tom, good luck. Thank you for talking with me about episode 2, and we'll look forward to the next ones, episode 3, coming up about New Mexico.
That's very soon. That'll be done in a couple of weeks.
Okay. Well, excellent.
All right.
Well, thanks for
Thank
joining
you,
me.
Pat.
You
I
bet.
appreciate it.
You're welcome. Good to talk to you. That is Tom Schillaci, filmmaker, joining me here on KSJE to talk about the Gold King mine spill and the documentary films he is producing about that from 2015. I'll be back with more in just a moment, everyone. The time right now is 8:39.
How automation could be making some jobs more dangerous.